When 18-year-old Michael Brown was shot and killed by a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri, what started as a local conflict quickly became a complex story about race, justice, and the use of police force. Saturday, August 9th. Michael Brown, an unarmed African-American, is 2 days away from starting college when he's stopped by a police officer. Exactly what happens next is hard to tell because of conflicting accounts, but ultimately, Brown is shot and killed. Small, vocal protests soon form around the site of the shooting, and police reinforcements are called in. Sunday night, a vigil turns into a protest. A heavy police presence is on the scene. The protests turn into riots, and a local convenience store is set on fire. Police fire tear gas at the protesters for the first but not the last time. For the next 3 days, the tension between law enforcement and protesters continues to ratchet up until you get this. By Thursday, the president calls for calm and criticizes both the local authorities and the protesters.
There is never an excuse for violence against police or for those who would use this tragedy as a cover for vandalism or looting.
Missouri Governor Jay Nixon asks the State Highway Patrol to take over security of Ferguson. Captain Ron Johnson immediately makes an impact.
Hey, you can stay out here all night. The only thing that I ask is that we pull back a little bit.
Friday, after a respite from large protests, Darren Wilson is identified as the officer who shot Michael Brown. At the same time, police release security footage of Brown taking part in a robbery at a Ferguson convenience store just prior to the police stop. Chief of Police Tom Jackson later clarifies that Brown was not stopped for the robbery, just for jaywalking. But the police do claim that after being stopped, Brown tried to grab Officer Wilson's gun. Brown's friend, Dorian Johnson, who was at the scene, offers a dramatically different account.
So the officer's trying to pull him in, and he's pulling away from the officer.
On Friday night, the protests resume, with some reports of looting. Saturday, Governor Nixon orders a curfew in Ferguson from midnight until 5 a.m. Sunday begins with Captain Johnson giving a heartfelt speech to rally the community.
I love you, I stand tall with you, and I'll see you out there.
Protests now have a party-like atmosphere. But by nightfall, the police and protesters are clashing once again, with Molotov cocktails flying in one direction and tear gas in the other. Monday morning, the governor calls in the National Guard to help with security. Later, an autopsy report shows where 6 bullets hit the unarmed Brown. In a bloody week charged with questions about race and excessive force, these images bring us back to the beginning. While the details of the Ferguson story have evolved, the core questions haven't changed.